While we are not necessarily intentionally offensive here at A Word from the Shadows, occasionally we will tell an off-color joke, accidentally use a cuss word, or be politically incorrect. You have been warned. I'll get to the president talk after the song. Tell me what you think. Ain't bad for one take, huh? What you think? Okay. Hello, folks. I hope you're doing well out there. Also, first of all, I want to shout out my dude up, Justin from Connecticut. He'll know who he is if he's watching this episode. Hey, we had some lively times in East Haven, kid. Yeah, for sure, man. New Haven used, it's a cool city, man. It used to be a really cool punk rock, alternative, hardcore scene there. A cool club to tune in, man. Yeah, I had some lively times in New Haven. Yeah, and East Haven, yeah, with you for a while. Anyway, man, I hope you're doing well. So today's topic is going to be my experience dealing with the federal courts, dealing with the Federal Bureau of Prisons, and that whole process. I got 120 months, which is 10 years, in the feds, and um, so when I was first arrested, I was taken to MCC Manhattan. I spoke on that in one of my previous videos, and I stayed there for about a year, going through the cop out, where I pled guilty, and then they do an extensive pre-sentencing investigation and all this other stuff in the feds. It's not like the state. The state, you make a plea bargain for a certain number of years, and then you go back to court and you get sentenced to that number of years. And so, like, the pre-sentencing report is not nearly as significant like it is it in the feds. Yeah. So I don't want to digress, but so I go through that whole process, and that whole thing, for me to arrest to actually sentencing takes about a year. And I was there in MCC Manhattan. And then once you get sentenced in MCC Manhattan, they send you to MDC Brooklyn because that's where everybody goes through. It's a transit hub. It's also, the Eastern District of New York's Federal Detention Center. It's a transit hub. And they send people there from all over New England to get designated to go into whatever BOP facility. So there's a lot of stuff going on there. So I stay there for about 45 days, and I get designated. My next stop is United States Penitentiary, Canaan. Now, I consider myself pretty versed, right? And I had never heard of the place, right? And this is about, like, over 10 years ago now, so when this whole thing happened. So about, 9 years ago, I get to United States Penitentiary, Canaan. And I would have to say that is the most real and horrible prison, pound for pound, in the United States. It's just in every way, it's a bad scene, man. I mean, so, I'm in jail for like about a year and a half, right? And at the time, yeah, I'll admit it, man. I was caught up in substance abuse, and I had a girlfriend, man. And she was a cool chick, She was cool, good people, and she was looking out for me. And I was partaking in things, illegal substances and stuff like that in jail. Now, I didn't bring them in. I don't know how they got in. I mean, it's supposed to be a maximum security federal installation with cameras and roving guards and all kind of security and stuff, and the whole place was flooded with some boxing and shit. And then they coming in through the visits, because I had several visits, right? And I'm sitting across from my visitor like 3 feet. You get a brief hug and embrace, and you have to sit 3 feet apart, no touching, none of that. Like, the cops right there, you can see everything you're doing. Then you get a quick embrace, and your visitor leaves. And one time, my girlfriend at the time came and see me, and because she was coming to see me so much, not every week, but like a couple times a month or once a month, whenever she could pull it off. She was in Brooklyn, New York at that time, and I was in USP Canaan, which is a Waymart, Pennsylvania. It's about 100 miles away from the city. But she would come whenever she could, and because they got that kind of mindset, like, wow, why is she coming so much? She's probably passing him something, like she cared about me, didn't even really enter into her thinking, Of course, they pulled her in there, searched, and didn't find anything. But she was like, oh man, she came on the visit. She was like, oh man, you wouldn't believe it. They pulled me in and searched me, this and that. But of course, I didn't have anything, So we had a pretty pleasant visit, but it happened. So I'm in jail for about a year and a half, right? And I end up, I shit you not, man, I end up on loss of all of my privileges for 40 years. I only had 10 years, which is a decade, so I don't want to say only had 10 years because, I mean, that's a long ass time. But, uh, you know, uh, like I said, I was participating, so I was, getting substances and then paying for them. So, there's small amounts as a boxing because you don't need a lot, but I was caught up in that addiction at the time. But I was paying my bills, man. I was doing the right thing. I wasn't on no grind ball shit, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so, I would just ask her and she would do it, you know what I mean? And, so, so the authorities caught up to me, right? Through somebody else, didn't even have nothing to do with me. SIS, they call it Special Investigative Services, was looking at this other dude, and I did something with him, and it wasn't even really illegal. I just sent him some money to go to commissary for me so I could stock up on everything in case of a lockdown. Okay, me and him didn't even have no illegal dealings, and he did it. Gave my stuff. I gave him what I owed him for doing it. Everything was cool. But they were looking at him, and they got a beat on him, and that showed that transaction and his history. And then it led it back to me, and it showed all the transactions I had made with different people, just rocking and rolling and shit. So instead of just giving me like, writing the shots, and then giving me like, a 6 months or a year loss of everything as a punishment. That would have been extreme, but I mean, at least that would have been some kind of like fairness. They gave me like, I don't know, 15 incident reports and took 18 months every of all my privileges. That includes visits, phones, commissary, and email. They took all that, 15 months consecutive. So I had to do 18 months loss of everything, 18 months loss of everything, 18 months. So it equaled up to 40 years. 30 years past my maximum expiration date. Now, this is for non-violent, low-level stuff, and I'm not saying, hey, I shouldn't have been held responsible for what I did, but the punishment should have fit the crime. Now, this dude, his name is actually, I'm gonna put him on blast. The dude's a straight piece of shit. His name is Mark Rindo. I hope he's well, but I want anybody who knows this guy to know he's a straight-up sadomasochist piece of shit. He was routinely taking people's privileges for 10, 15 years, and the people in the regions knew what he was doing, and they was allowing him to do it, man. No, and I ended up, going from coast to coast while I was in the feds, and there's no other what they call a disciplinary hearing officer in the whole system that did things like him. They finally fucking got rid of his ass, but they didn't go back and undo all the fucked up shit that he did. As far as like I guarantee you, he put 2,000 inmates while he was a DHO officer in Canaan. People in Canaan and coming through Canaan, getting a little bit of trouble. They go before him. He takes everything for 18 months. On the lowest minor, low-level violation. He didn't care, and he was doing it, and he was getting away with it, and people was appealing this shit, and like region to shoot it down. Like they would deny your appeal. Okay, they're all a bunch of pieces of shit too. Again, I'm not saying that people who do rule violations, okay, maybe they should be held accountable for their actions, but the punishment should fit the crime. So this happened to me about a year and a half into a 10-year sentence. Now, this is what it was in Canaan. So it was just a bad place on every level. Okay. So at that point, I had to go to just like living off the land and grinding, and and I didn't really have to worry about following a whole bunch of rules after that because I've still got like 7 years and change to do. That's if I keep my good time, which is very unlikely because I'm in the United States Penitentiary. So I did end up losing about 8 or 9 months of that too, because you got to understand that club fed shit, man. That might be happening at the camps in the lower security joints. But you got some FCIs, federal correctional institutions, that are pretty tough places, and then the last thing you want to do is ever end up in a fucking United States penitentiary. That's something you will regret, okay? Guaranteed, real bad, okay? Like I said, everything about it's horrible. I can tell you all kind of stories that make your toes curl, but I'll spare you that this episode anyway. So I end up going, from, and the result of that is that, I lost contact with all my meaningful relations in the community, okay? Federal government didn't care. They could have cared less, okay? Now, this is my government, okay? I'm going to tell you about the human rights abuses and violations that's happening right here in your own country. Okay, we need to come up with a flag for our down and out people, man. People on the streets, people suffering undue, long, harsh incarcerations, and start putting that beside our name on social media. That would be meaningful. You know what I'm saying? You know, I want what's best for everyone, but my primary concern isn't Ukraine or Taiwan. My primary concern is my people right here in my country, my citizens, right? You know, my homies and people I care about. You know what I'm saying? I hope it works out for everybody. But you know, I'm not one of those hypocrite types that like put a flag beside my name, but like don't do nothing in my community that's gonna help out. Like helps a homeless shelter or help a animal rescue mission or do something meaningful right here at home. You know what I mean? Something you might have to get your hands dirty at, but something or a little sweaty or something. But it's actually meaningful and helpful. You know what I mean? So I think we need to come up with one of those type of flags. And so anyway, I got about 7 years and 9 months left to do on this 10-year sentence. So I saw they were trying to grind me completely into the concrete, right? They gave me 10 years, which was an excessive sentence, but the judge could have given me more. And then they sent me to like the worst prisons you've never heard of. This place is worse than Guantanamo Bay, man. Okay, because Guantanamo Bay's got all kind of spotlights on it. That's the equivalent of a federal military / civilian penitentiary in a military installation. But all these jails are horrible. So you never heard of USP Canaan? Yeah. And it's got about 1,500 federal maximum security inmates in it, and it's the last stop for the worst bunch. And they give you no incentives to behave. Like you got dudes doing outrageously long prison sentences. Okay, you lose any kind of good time. Okay, there's no way to earn it back. There's no programs that's worth a fuck. They got a few programs you could take out of a booklet that I'm sure they charge outrageous amounts of in the budget to provide, but it's really worth less than 5 cents. Okay. Because there's no one-on-one meaningful counseling. I mean, they got a school down there, and it's run by like an inmate school aide. They got a teacher drinking coffee in the corner, that's getting paid top dollar, top benefits. You know what I'm saying? So I wasn't impressed with nothing about it. It was, and it was just mismanaged and managed by a bunch of worthless pieces. Well, I'm gonna chill, but it was tough times. It was a hard ride. So I ended up getting out, and how did I make it out, man? Well, I started. First of all, I knew who the bookies was, so I figured out who the bookies was, and then I found a way so I could work for them and be their runners, so they would write out tickets, right, and then I would be the guy that, would go and give it to a guy, to a guy through the fence for the other side of the jail, go run stamps down here, collect tickets over there, whatever they needed me to do, and I learned the game from the inside out, so all my, my female friend that I had, she ended up leaving after about a year or so after that, understandably so. I mean, I can't make a phone call, I can't get a visit, no commissary for the rest of your sentence. This is nothing, you got nothing coming, right? And remember, this was imposed on me for low-level, non-violent crimes. I mean, basically, rule violations, not crimes. Low-level rule violations is the equivalent of like walking on the grass or not having your shirt tucked in. It was extremely excessive. You know what I mean? And everybody I talked to about it after that was like, "Wow, we can't believe that fucking creep did that to you, man." But because it was did by a federal employee, no other federal employee wanted to get involved and undo it and do the right thing. So I ended up having to ride that shit. So now they let me out of prison, and I'm supposed to go to the South Bronx. Okay, that I get busted in Manhattan, and that's the Southern District of New York, and the halfway house for that is in the South Bronx. But it's full. So they send me to the one over in Brooklyn, and that's the Eastern District of New York. New York City has 2 federal districts, Southern, Eastern, right? And so they send me to the halfway house over there, right? So that shit's administered by a bunch of ghetto-ass fools, and I'll just leave it at that, right? All the funds are being misappropriated and not being spent on the inmates that are indigent, that are going there with no money, no funds. They're supposed to have stipends and all that to help you do that. They don't have none of that, okay? And they don't even want you to go do no volunteer work at Goodwill or Salvation Army. You got a bunch of ass, for people who was really trying, I was really trying to do the right thing. They gave me 6 months halfway out because Trump, and that's a side note. Look, man, I know a lot of people don't like Trump for a lot of good reasons or whatever reasons they have, but I'm going to tell you something. You probably never heard this before. But he is the only president, like in U.S. history, that has ever signed a bill that allowed federal prisoners to earn good time, and and in the Congress, the Republicans in Congress found a way to like whittle it down, so like only 20% of the federal prison population actually qualify for these programs. The other people get disqualified for things that could have happened. Well, you didn't actually hurt nobody, but it could have been a violent crime. So therefore, we're going to consider it a violent crime, and we're going to give you the appropriate amount of time. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though no one got hurt and that wasn't your intention. You know what I'm saying? So you don't qualify for any of those programs. So I learned the game, and then I became a bookie, and then eventually I opened up, prison commissary stores. I had all kind of wheels and deals going on because I was already on most of all my privileges. Hey man, this was what it was. So that's the way I maintained my sanity. I worked out. I got through it. So anyway, I get to the halfway house, right? And like these fools ain't doing nothing to help nobody do nothing, okay? Like I said, it's totally ill managed, misappropriated. The feds contracted out to a private corporation, and obviously, if you're doing the right thing, but it doesn't matter, man, because there's no funds there to actually help you. If you don't have family, or you don't have friends, or you don't have some kind of means in the community that will help you, get yourself together. If you're struggling by yourself and you're just using whatever means they can afford, they're going to give you. Chances are you probably fell. So what happened with my personal story was that when I got out of prison, I made contact with my son, and me and him never had a relationship, and he turned out to be a real cool guy, and I can't call him a kid because he's a grown man. And me and him hit it off, and we went through whatever we went through, and we found a way to get past it, and I'll just leave it at that. And he's a real good guy, man. He's a real mellow, cool guy. And anyway, me and him hit it off, man, and I love him. He's my son, you know what I'm saying? And I have his best interest at heart. And so me and him hit it off, and through him, I got to talking to his mom again, which happened to be my first true love. You know what I mean? And me and her got talking again, and we hit it off. Now, mind you, this is a law-abiding lady. She's never been having even a jaywalking ticket, nothing, right? And she raised 3 kids, adult kids, right? So this has all happened. My son, and she had 2 kids with another guy. They got divorced. They have been divorced 8 or 10 years by the time I come back in the scene. You know what I mean? So we get back together, right? And so I'm trying, it's routine. Like, I done been in the halfway house 3 months on a 6 months term, right? So my last part of my 10-year sentence, the last 6 months of it, they gave me halfway house. Sent me to Brooklyn, and I stayed there 3 months. And of course, I put my life back together, man. I made meaningful contacts that they had tried to destroy because they didn't allow me to use the phone one time, legally, one time, for 7 years and 9 months, dog. No commissary legally, okay? No visits, period. They did everything they could do to grind me into the concrete. And then when I come out, I don't have nothing, okay? I come from Florida, and they send me back to New York in the middle of winter. I don't have nothing, okay? I'm in prison. So I come out, and so, like, they don't have no room with coats or boots. They don't have none of that. And they don't even give you a stipend for Salvation Army or Goodwill or nothing, right? So you're basically hit if you ain't got nobody to help you. And this is a federal government, and this is a federal halfway house system. It's horribly managed, and it's set up for, struggling, participants to fail, okay? That's what it's set up for. That's my opinion. And that was my personal experience. So me and her get back together, and she decides she wants me to come live with her. I'm grateful that I love her. I want to come there. And it's a great household. It's straight up, man. Everything's legit. And so we put the paperwork into the halfway house. We do everything right, man. We sign all the papers, cross all the T's, dot the I's, and and we put the paperwork in, and they were like, oh yeah, it takes them about a week and a half, 2 weeks to get back to me, and they tell me, yo, you only owe 90 days, so the BOP, the Federal Bureau of Prisons, is not even willing to look at this, consider it, because she's not on your PSI. She wasn't on my PSI, nor was my son, because I was with another lady at the time, and I didn't feel the need to get these law-abiding, decent citizens even names and no reports at all. It had nothing to do with why I was in prison, okay? So I never even speak on them, all right? they knew about the lady I was with because she wrote letters to the judge saying I was a good guy and please give me a break. You know what I'm saying? So that's the only reason why they knew about her. You know what I mean? Like, so they was like, well, she's not on your PSI, and that's too much investigation with just 90 days left, and so you're hit. You just got to deal with it. Now, like I said, this is an ill-managed, ghetto-ass halfway house over in Brooklyn. And it was okay. I mean, as far as the neighborhood stuff, I wasn't tripping on that. But the problem is, it was just fucked up. It was just bad management, man. And the way federal law is constructed, you don't have to commit a crime. If you got 2 prior felony convictions that qualify, like I said, you get a low-level drug offense, a low-level crime that they could say it's a violent crime, but you didn't actually hurt nobody. No, not nobody. It was never in your intent to hurt nobody. But you did commit a crime. You had to pay for it. But then they can go back and use those two crimes that you've already completely served your sentence for if you get busted somewhere where there's even a gun that you don't know is even there. And somebody else, and you're in the house and they say, nah, that guy didn't know that gun was there. I didn't never tell him that. They can still charge you with it if you have those 2 crimes to give you a constructive possession of a firearm that you didn't even know was there or existed, and give you 15-year mandatory minimum sentence. There's already plenty of laws in the books to prosecute criminals and bad guys. I mean, so that's how real it was. So I wasn't willing to stay in New York City no longer than necessary, and then get trapped off on something that I'm not a part of. And see, it's not the city of New York that's going to be dealing with me in their judicial system. The feds is going to take jurisdiction and then try to break me all the way off. I'm not going to put myself in that position. I got to get the hell out of here. So they had the paperwork. I stepped off. I left, man. I went up, packed the backpack. I went to my girl's house, right? Now I lied to her. You know what I'm saying? I told her. I said, because she knew we put the paperwork in. So I was like, yeah, they allowed me to come in. She don't have no dealings. So she never had no dealings with the justice system whatsoever. She don't know nothing about it. They're going to do an investigation and all that and call. She just went with what I told her. You know what I mean? So I lied to her. I said, yeah. And I know it was a creepball thing too, man. But I loved her, man. I want to get fucked. I wanted to come home, man. I needed some love in my life. So she, and so we started a whole life over, man, and got married, and I was happy, she was happy. I wasn't breaking any laws. I wasn't up to nothing. I was living a law-abiding lifestyle. Yeah, I was kind of a creep mode for lying to her, but thankfully she forgave me for it. After I got arrested, and, I get arrested, and I call her up, and, yeah, so that was a conversation I'll keep personal. But, yeah, so, yeah. And, but she ended up forgiving me, thank God, man, and, so not only did they bust me, because I have moved from up there to down here to Florida with her, right? And so not only did they bust me, they arrest me in Florida, they send me back to New York via Oklahoma City, via the county jail to Jacksonville Airport, from Jacksonville Airport to Oklahoma City, from Oklahoma City to Brooklyn, New York, right? MDC, Brooklyn, New York. So I stayed there for about 2 weeks, and my lawyer, they tell me, yo, you got court. And my wife had told me ahead of time, because she had been calling around for me, talked to a couple of lawyers, and it turned out they did indict me for escape. All right? So now I'm charged in another district. So my original charge of supervised release is out of the Eastern District of New York. So they sent me to the halfway house in Brooklyn, which is out of my original conviction and supervised release is out of the Southern District of New York, Manhattan. Now, when they take me back to the city on the halfway house, they send me to Brooklyn, and that's a different federal district. So they indict me in a different federal district, all right? Charged me with escape, and they gave me up to 5 years for this, because I just walked away from a halfway house, I didn't hacksaw through a wall, But that's still that's serious times, 5 years out of life, man. Now, again, the PSI kind of helped me because, like the probation lady, she I wouldn't say she was cool. I think she was fair, You know, like she listened to what I had to say, man. I didn't want to leave that halfway house. They gave me 6 months. I stayed there 90 days. I was doing the right thing. I wasn't committing no crimes. I was going on my passes, coming back when I was supposed to. There was no issues there. I reconnected with my son, and I met a good woman that was willing to, you know, to embrace me and give me an opportunity to succeed in life. I filled out their paperwork. So I did everything they wanted me to do, and they denied me for some bogus BS reason. And I couldn't take the chance of staying in New York and getting trapped off, so I had to keep it moving, man. Okay, yeah. So luckily, like I told the lady that, and she wrote that up and recommended time served for me, and I got the right judge. Now, of course, the prosecutor, he asked for like 2 years, right? Because they could have given me a maximum of like 5 years and a fine. He asked for 2 years, and of course, obviously a fine. And the judge looked at it and said, whoa. What I'm seeing here, man, you people ought to be. Actually, when he came out of the courtroom, and like hardly ever as a federal criminal defendant do you get to walk out of a courtroom, right? But the judge looked at what they had did to me, all right, and just how they had this been foul. And he said, you know what? As soon as he came out on sentencing day, I didn't know what the guy was going to do. I was trying to get time served because it was about 6 or 7 months for that whole process to play out. For them to get me back to Brooklyn, indict me, go through, you know, a PS, they call it pre-sentencing investigation, to go through all that. And every prisoner at federal prison is going to get that, okay? That's just what it is. And the judge bases his maximum or minimum sentence off of what the probation department said. You know, that's the way that goes. So, you know, I just think the lady was real fair, you know what I mean? And when the judge saw that, first thing he said when he come out of the courtroom, we're releasing this young man today. And then he told the prosecutor, he said, like, look, man, why you have to go for the maximum on every little crime, man? That's what the federal prosecutors do. They ask for, you know, years for jaywalking in a federal district. They could give you life sentence. You know, federal law is so ludicrous that like the federal prosecutor could probably, I can't say this for a fact, but he could probably give you like 5 years for, you know, jaywalking in a federal district, man, and like if he really wanted to, and if he had a judge that was going to go along with that BS. This so happened, man, the judge that saw my case, he saw it for what it was. He was like, yo, this dude did 10 years. He paid for the crime he committed. He got out of prison, tried to do the right thing, rebuilt his life in a law-abiding way, and you lames did everything you could do to put every stumbling block you could put in front of him, you know. And he said, no, he said, I didn't have to say nothing. He said, you got anything to say? I said, Your Honor, I would never commit these crimes again that I committed in my past. And I have changed, and people can change. And that was it. You know what I'm saying? And he released me. And not only did he release me, he allowed me to come back to Florida where my wife was living, over 1,000 miles unescorted, because like, hey man, I had proved, I got out of prison and I did leave the halfway house, but I didn't do no crimes, and I'm gone for over a year, you know what I'm saying, you know, and I totally rebuilt my whole life, and, you know, he allowed me to leave, and like they don't get that in the marshals, the U.S. Marshals and the FBI. They didn't give me a bus ticket because U.S. Marshals control all that court transportation stuff. The U.S. Marshals have like 5 different divisions: transportation, you know, protection for judges, and then judge bailiffs and their clerks, and you know, everything to do with prisoners, and not only going out and capturing certain prisoners, but also all the administrative things that concern transportation in the courts for the federal system. You know, it's just a different you know, sector, but it's all U.S. Marshals, right? But they released me. They let me out downtown Brooklyn, like in prison grab. Now I got all kind of gear back at the MDC, but I'm not going back over there. I gave that shit to myself. If I don't come back, you can have it, man. You know what I mean? And it was prison stuff anyway, so, you know, he was looking at some time, so hopefully he made out okay. But, you know, they don't give me a Metro card. They don't give me nothing. My lawyer loaned me $50, all right? So I was able to get a pack of smokes, a cup of coffee, some train fare, get on the train, go to my homie over in Manhattan, and then by way of him, my wife was able to send me the money to get a ticket to come home. You know what I mean? Yeah, but, you know, that was a horrible human rights violation on several levels. And if I told you some of the stories that happened and I saw on a daily basis in those United States penitentiaries, it would curl your toes. And my personal experience in solitary confinement and the whole, and just dealing with all that, and then being able to come through the other side, man. But I was never gonna let even though I did deserve to be punished for what I did. I admit that, man. Okay, let's get that out of the way. And I would never do it again. Okay, I was wrong. But the punishment that I had to receive because of that, man, it was excessive. It was raw, brutal, rough, and bloody. And wasn't just me. Anybody who finds herself in a United States penitentiary, you're in for a rude awakening, man. Okay, and throughout the episodes, as we continue with, as a word from the shadows, we're gonna discuss all kind of things and probably go on ghost hunts and go squatting and who knows what, but. A lot of it will consist of commentary, man. So it was a wild ride for sure, and whoo, what can I say? The only thing I'm just grateful that I made it to the other side, man, and I'm able to produce those kind of songs. And I could give those two songs away, the one I did a few days ago and that one, because like I got like 2 or 3 dozen songs that I got the music for, and I wrote while I was locked down like a dog in the big house. You know what I mean? That's what I do, man. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did like the song, hit me up, man. Let me know what you think, man. And, I'd appreciate it. So until next time, brother, sister, folks, people, stay up, man. And hey, if you can't be good, you better be good at it. So if you want to know the rest of the story, you go to YouTube and request a word from the shadows and check this video out right here.